Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives. Not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Yeah. Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial is set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us today. Jason, thank you for engineering. Rich Scheben's with us. Rich Scheben is at the front of the blackboard, front of the classroom. Welcome, Rich Scheben.
Well, thank you, Vince. How's everything in Missouri these days?
Really, really well. I mean, extraordinarily well. No kidding. No jesting. Everything is going just great. But there is one thing I wanted to mention about defective Chinese products. Is that all right with you?
Sure thing.
Okay. So, it has to do with cars. But that's really, it's bigger than that. So I was working on a golf cart, yesterday. And, this golf cart had gum in the fuel tank from not being used for years. So I cleaned out the fuel tank, flushed it out, put a rag in there, swabbed the rag around like a mop, got all the dirt and crud out of it, and flushed the fuel lines, and I decided to put a new fuel filter on it, along with a new carburetor. I had a new carburetor for it. And so I'm looking at these fuel filters. They came in a package of 10, and they're all from Make in China. Communist China. And so I was looking at them, and the way fuel filters are made, and these are gasoline filters, the way that they're made is they have a paper pleated element inside a clear plastic housing. So you can look at the whole thing, and you can see that one end has a cap on it, and it's cemented, and the other end of the pleated filter is just shoved in there, and it's not sealed. That means that particles of dirt can get around the actual filter element and bypass the filter. While the owner of this fuel filter, the owner of this equipment, thinks it's working perfectly well. Because, well, heck, it's a new fuel filter. It makes me angry to think about these kinds of things. So now I have to find another brand of fuel filter that I have to look at it and make sure that it actually is manufactured correctly so that it will actually work. Not some of the time, but all the time. That kind of stuff I'm seeing more and more and more. Substandard Chinese junk. And a lot of it is sold on eBay. And here's what I think is happening. Now, this is my opinion. So if you're a lawyer and you want to sue me, that'd be fine. I'd be glad to have you on the air, and I'll make sure you get all the credit you deserve. But this is my opinion. I believe that what happens is in China, someone forgets to do the whole job. And they make a bunch of them because they don't know how to make one. They can only make lots of them. Whatever it is, they can only make lots of them. And by the time someone figures out that they made a lot of them without completely completing the manufacturing process in total, they go, oh no, we got 3 million of these things. What are we going to do? Well, there's always eBay. I think that's what happens. Now, when you look at the pictures, you can't always see all the details of how the internals of a fuel filter are manufactured. So you actually go by trust. And you buy these things, and then you find out later on, when you go to use them, that they are they contain a major manufacturing defect or a major design flaw. And that's what I wanted to ring the bell and tell the class about. So if you think that the product, just because it's in a bag or a box or it's new, is manufactured properly, I'm here to tell you that is not the case. Rich, any comments?
Yeah, how much time do I have? No, I'm really serious. How much time do I have?
You've got the rest of the broadcast. I can just put my feet up, relax, eat bonbons.
Okay. Because I can go, I can connect many dots, go into many tangents, buddy. You know, this forced obsolescence is by design. It's not just because of China. I mean, we're handing the keys. We've handed the keys, as per some of the articles I've already mentioned, to our electric grid to China. We're handing our manufacturing. We've handed our manufacturing process to China. This is all done to delegitimize work. This is all done to control population and reduce it. This is all done to basically demand the bars of standards and expectations for a job to be lowered so no one can control their own destiny with hard work, proven results, qualifications, et cetera, et cetera. So too many people think, well, I thought it was about fairness and equality and tolerance and diversity and all this stuff. No. All this is part of the plan. These are divide and conquer strategies in order to centralize a world government. And, it's, just like these new designations, ESG, environmental, social government, or EDI, equality, diversity, and inclusion. It's basically BS. It's a consolidation of power, money, and control. And I'm blue in the face talking about how there's like 655 people who have over $4 trillion of wealth in this country, and 200 million can't come up with $1,000 for an emergency payment. That might have temporarily changed with some of this stimulus, but most of the stimulus is going to, money laundering, payoffs, sponsors, donations. There's many categories under special interests and lobbying and PAC and things like that. So basically, it's also done to create gag orders on Border Patrol, on NOAA, hiding elite crimes, everything from pedophilia. So what happens when you come out with all these politically correct buzzwords and blame everything on, it's white supremacists, even though the Gates, the Bezos, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, the Zuckerbergs, who are literally doing every crime in the book and getting away with it, and blaming it on white males when basically the poor middle-class white male can no longer control their own destiny because he can no longer benefit or control his own destiny because you're getting jobs based on what group you're in now. So what it does is, and this is all part of the forced obsolescence by design, it's not just a China phenomenon. So when you lower the quality, and I've spent a lot of time on stock buybacks, and basically I've talked a lot about deflation, inflation, stagflation, which we have a combination of all the above, and we're heading towards more inflation of necessities for the little guy, which is about 93%. But stock buybacks is a great micro example because basically it's not for expansion of new products or the company or services or R&D or people and employees. It's to boost earnings per share, which is a fake artificial economy. And that's what these stock buybacks do. It puts money into the executive's pocket, into the CEOs, CFOs, for example, and it doesn't do an expansion of productivity for the little people. So everything is really fake. So when you look at all these artificial growth, it's all artificial on paper. So as quality goes down, expertise goes down, qualifications go down, proven results don't mean anything. Product safety is a hoax, just like our medication today. All depends on which expert or scientist or official authority has his hand out and is willing to take the money and be bought off at the expense of the American people, which eliminates incentives, opportunity. No one's earning their job anymore. So what happens to the bars of standards and expectations? It goes through the floor. What it does, connecting more dots, is create more animosity because people are the low information voter, as per the PSYOP, the psychology behind it. They are groomed and cultivated to go protect their group, their hyphen, and their pronoun. So what does that do with animosity? Increases it. So what happens to the confidence in the system, in the government, in our paper currency, the Federal Reserve note, which is hanging by a thread for basically world reserve currency? We have more infighting. We have more chaos. We have more race baiting, gender baiting, sex baiting. We have wars for everything by professional pot stirrers. We have a destruction of meritocracy. We have a destruction of every institution, which affects civilization as a whole. And the psyops behind all this makes the low information voter that the elite call useful idiots, justifying and rationalizing hate, and then they rationalize the forced caste system put on the people, the poor/middle class, especially the bottom 93%, while these elites, you got to remember, narratives are like crap, and I wouldn't use that four-letter word if I wasn't on AM and FM radio. Narratives are like crap. They flow downhill. So these people, all these people, these great majority of people, like some of the names I just mentioned here, who are white males, want to consolidate power, money, and control, and the narrative flows downhill. They sell the narratives to people who are willing to take the money to sell out the rest of us Americans. These are the white males who their sons, their family, their close connections, nepotism connections, get the good jobs. When they're saying the poor middle-class white males can no longer work, or if they do work, they're told what they can do. They're told about what kind of promotions they can get, if any. So the nepotism connections for the jobs are all going to these big-mouth people at the top who are selling the narratives to people willing to sell out our country. Those are the same people who get millions of dollars of inheritances, money, land, and business. I'm not talking measly hundred thousands like maybe some of us may get. I'm talking millions. People who don't even have to work. In my personal experience, and there are exceptions to the rule, because there's exceptions to every rule, but my personal opinion, the people who receive the most money through inheritances are the people who hoard that money and don't help other people and are willing to follow the narrative because they have a certain amount to lose even though they didn't earn it. And I notice the little people who have very little are the ones sticking up for the people in our country. Now, there's the Mike Lindells of the world. There are multimillionaires like that, Donald Trump, who have stuck their neck out for the American people, but they are the minority, not the majority. They are not the rule, but the exception. So we have to connect all these dots with this artificial growth, and we see this, the helicopter money under some stimulus plan, it's for the infrastructure. Just a small percentage goes to infrastructure. It's for COVID. This is a small percentage. It's for payoffs. It's money laundering. The money goes back to the people who are making the laws to put in their own pocket. So what that creates is more inflation. Even though we're in a stagflate, we're heading more towards stagflation. We've been in deflation. For the little guy, they have the worst of all three worlds. So it's eliminating the middle class, and we got a break coming up, folks. I'll finish this on the other side. We appreciate you being here.
Rich Scheben's at the Blackboard class, and no calls today. Rich has a full schedule for the 2-hour broadcast. Rich, when you're done, I've got a comment about inflation, but please continue.
Yeah. Well, what we forget to do, and I know that I maybe overuse this analogy or example, but I talk about it regarding playing chess or shooting pool. The best players think 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 moves ahead. And we have to look at what the bottom line is. That's why these people use things like Keynesian economics. Central bank, top-down, elite control, corruption and manipulation is now a sport, no accountability, and it creates what I call an incognito caste system that benefits the status quo, where deficits don't matter. banks can be insolvent, governments can be insolvent, but they'll just do, creative accounting to buy time while they're bringing in robotics, automation, artificial intelligence, and the technocracy to surveil and censor and blackmail the people. So we have this elite interventionism, which is print, inflate, buy now, pay later. And when everybody's in debt, or a lot of people are, the elite can control the outcome of those people, of those behaviors, of those votes. That's what they do. It's all a big scam. So we need to follow the money. We need to see who the beneficiaries of these policies are regarding this artificial growth and helicopter money. This is why, when you look at, inflation going up, you look at demand going up, mostly because, like the stock buyback example, there's less productivity or producers here in America because manufacturing's gone abroad to China, and there's less products to choose from because the big corporations aren't putting more money and capital resources into products, into employees. They're putting it in their pocket via stock buybacks. So everything is fudged, all the numbers. So when you look at increased demand, how can you say it's increased demand when the velocity of money is almost non-existent because people are afraid, so they're holding on to their dollars in their pocket? You got to look at, there's increased rates going up, at least on the long end, and it's still historically low, I understand that. But if rates go up too much, even in a phony, artificial, illusionary market, it could crash the whole system. So why are they raising rates on the long end, 10-year and above, when the short end is at zero? How can they cap rates, at a certain point? Is it could it be to eliminate the middle class from leaving the cities so the elite can control them? What is the overall end result and who's the beneficiary? See, when you have rising rates going up a little bit, as you can see, the dollar has been a little stronger in the last few days. So there's a correlation usually, with rising rates and a stronger dollar. And that's also done to keep gold pushed down. So you got to think about who's the beneficiary of that? Why are people leaving urban, suburban America, moving to rural America to buy land? Is it because they want to be self-sufficient, like Vincent and I have talked about for years? Is it because they feel that X amount of dollars, doesn't matter what number, say 100,000, 500, that doesn't matter. Do they feel the people that they want to correlate that, make that transition from paper fiat to hard assets? I think both of those cases are very true. Just like there's creative accounting behind everything. Look at the new jobs report. Are we seeing new jobs and new businesses created? No. It's basically the jobs that were lost from the pandemic in order to get a little movement on those jobs. They're not new businesses. It's mostly leisure and hospitality, typically lower paying jobs. Economic growth, we're lucky if we get over 2%. If we do, over the next few months, it's only because of all this fake stimulus money. We even look at debt, all debt, even margin debt, never mind corporate debt, government debt, individual household debt.
Yeah, hold that thought.
We're
We'll be right
borrowing more
back.
money to gamble more.
We'll be right back.
Folks, when you look at, I made a comment about the jobs report that came out. There's a lot of ambiguities in that. There's a lot of filtered and edited information. I talk about debt, household debt. I've spent a lot of time on that. Government debt, corporate debt, all the zombie companies, the companies that can't even afford to pay their own interest on their debt. And you have to look at why they're hiding this data. You got to look at how they're distracting, dumbing down, and dividing the American people by groups. You got to look at why are they editing out certain data on certain reports, which they do almost. You can't believe anything anymore. You have to do your own reading and research. Like on the job report, the 25 to 54-year-olds are always the big sector. You know, it's supposedly post-college and supposedly pre-retirement, okay? So they often look at that number. But what they didn't tell you is that they filtered out over 4 million people that have been eliminated from that data. That's creative accounting. You know, why are the powers that be, why do they want paper markets in everything? They even want it in crypto now. We've had all this for forever for silver, gold, or precious metals because they want to manipulate the market with naked shorts. Same thing with the futures market. It's all about manipulation of data. Nothing you read is true anymore. And this is part of the delegitimization of work. And Vince can verify this. For 10 years, doesn't matter what radio show I was on, but I know with Vince, I've talked about the delegitimization of work. When you lower the bars of standards and expectations for a job based on what group you're in, which is basically a psyop designed to race bait, gender bait, create ideologies, voting purposes, is to manufacture perception, pity, guilt. It's to sway public opinion and hold on to the narratives. It's group identity politics. It's insulting the work ethic, ability, and intelligence of people purposely for the vote to create chaos and infighting and race wars. Their job is to degrade, disrespect people. Their job is to reward mediocrity and destroy every expectation and standard which correlates to the destruction of opportunity and knowledge and productivity and innovation for the people in America. We have to connect all these dots. And this is why I'm calling for producing results with ideas and solutions conferences around the world held at private venues where you can create small businesses alliance. We can have commerce clubs. We can have a golden parachute for the little people, a plan B if the Federal Reserve note goes south or the powers that be want to put us into some centralized fake SDR phony cryptocurrency that can be controlled, which has zero value. So we have to look at the direction that the elite want to funnel us so we can do something about it. You know, even talking about deflation and inflation, I can't tell you how many articles I read where there's people who have different opinions. And, you know, sometimes I'm going to be very cautiously curious with this. They're right. In other words, it can be debated because you can look at it from different sides because there's so many unknown factors, because there's so much corruption in our government and big corporations now. They're all being bailed out, too big to fail, too big to jail. You know, I have spent unbelievable amounts of time talking about welfare for the rich. I've spent hours talking about that. We don't know how long is the Fed going to buy treasuries. Are they going to continue issuing new bonds to pay for the old ones? What's going to happen to the credit market or the bond market or interest rates? They're all correlated. They're all what does collateral even mean anymore? Are they going to still monetize debt? Are they going to continue over leveraging loans? How are they going to cap rates on both sides of the yield curve? Are they going to continue with this phony incognito UBI and MMT, which is Universal Basic Income of Modern Monetary Theory? Are they going to continue coming out with all these bills and plans and stimulus packages under the guise of some benevolent name when just a few percent of it goes to that and the rest goes to money laundering and paying people off? Wait, I mean, the derivative market, how can you bundle all this stuff? Think about that. You're bundling and then rebundling and then reselling. It's under, it's not just credit default swaps. It's got a bunch of different names. And they could do bonds. They can do most assets, equities, commodities, real estate, currencies. It's a joke. It's a side bet with an insurance policy that bundles and sells and then rebundles and sells, and it's in the quadrillions of dollars. There's no validity to that. There's no honesty to that. There's no business model to that. I mean, really, what is even a business model today? I'm seeing valuations through the roof. Earnings are irrelevant. Markets are irrelevant. It's not just liquidity, solvency, inflation, and deflation that has been redefined. Really, what are fundamentals and fair value? What does leverage mean anymore? PE, PS ratios, GDP, even debt has been redefined. These people don't even have business plans, for crying out loud. Money printing up the wazoo, free market supply and demand, velocity of money means nothing. Profits mean nothing. All these corrupt companies that have been flagged and fined mean nothing. So when you talk about deflation and inflation, it looks like the powers that be are trying to buy time. This is why the people have to come together with ideas and solutions, conferences, clubs, movements, self-sufficiency preparedness schools, which I've talked about till I'm blue in the face. We have to expose the double standards and hypocrisies. If we no longer judge by hard work, effort, proven results, and qualification, and what I call the pick effect, which is patriotism, intelligence, and courage, then what do we have? We have nothing. We need citizen review boards. We need homeschooling, where the people who've been there, done that successfully in the private sector can come in as speakers and talk about practical experience and not theory. Oh, there's good teachers out there. I'm so tired of hearing that. There aren't good teachers out there if they're willing to sell their soul for their benefit package, their retirement, and their paycheck and their summers off for the so-called unions, teachers' unions, to basically teach everything from, changing your gender to teaching little boys how to give BJs to drag queen story hour, eliminating history, saying math and science is racist. That's not teaching. That's called selling out. We need public forums. We need to discuss laws of excess, because all the money and the protection and the consolidation of money, power, and control are going to not benevolence, but malevolence. These are the people that's been capitalizing their gains under the, capitalism and socializing their losses for the elite, and you're paying for it through cost shifting, through taxation, and inflation. The little guy, we don't have hedges. We don't have golden parachutes. That's why we need these ideas and solutions conferences. And I cannot tell you how many people in the top, say, 7% I've had meetings with. They all say, oh, it's a great idea, Rich. Let's do it. But they don't want to break out the checkbook. In fact, what they're doing is they're buying thousands of acres of land and putting hidden bunkers in it, or like the Bezos and the Gates, who are number 1 and 2 for buying land, especially farmland, for GMO and poisoning. I mean, we have, how much time have I spent on the poisoning of water and food, talking about red dye in our meats being literally grown in laboratories and bioreactors and 3D printers. Pesticides everywhere, GMOs everywhere, estrogen mimickers everywhere, steroids, hormones, antibiotics everywhere. We don't even have an immune system left. Everything's contaminated, tainted, or poisoned, or rigged. And all these people who I sit down with, if they don't buy land, they buy a yacht, or they buy a jet, or they buy a private island, or they buy a well-guarded, gated community, not to help the little people, but to help themselves. If we don't start speaking up, corruption will only continue. It won't matter about talking about deflation, inflation, forced obsolescence. We won't have a rule of law because we've lowered the bars of standards and expectations so much for getting a job, where certain people by certain groups feel entitled to play the victim group status card, to demand to lower the bars of standards and expectations, which doesn't give protection, rights, or restitution of the rule of law for the people targeted and affected, but gives runaway power to the elite organizations and enables and protects them with the most corrupt liability immunity legislation in the world, which destroys capitalism and enforces fraud, which, by the way, has no statute of limitations, creates more illegitimacy, more fascism, less consumer and government confidence, and creates more wealth inequality along the way. And then the useful idiots, instead of being an American, start protecting their group, their hyphen, and their pronoun because they're not well read or researched, and they're too lazy to verify. We're being killed by a lot of things: ignorance, apathy, indifference. But it's also cowardness and laziness. We've given free lunch to the elites at every level. So they have eliminated the rule of law for precedence and given you, the people, back divide and conquer strategy so everybody hates each other by psychology, by the psyop, by design. And they are looking for and finding people who are willing to sell you out to the highest bidder. In order and they get in return a manufactured perception of their self-importance by these elite people because they only care about their own self-preservation. We're all being used, duped, and played. The people no longer have representation. The Bill of Rights and Constitution is hanging by a thread. And now it's looking like, unless our military steps in or the people stand up, that over 1 million combat soldiers who died for our freedoms and liberties are going to die in vain. I want you to think about that. Doesn't matter what definitions are anymore because they're rewriting it. History, they're rewriting it. Common sense and logic, they're rewriting it. We're really close to nothing mattering, folks.
Rich Scheben's at the blackboard. Rich, do you want to continue?
I can, Vince. I know you had a question about inflation, and I just wanted to tell you I got so much what you call news in a flash, from health to just ordinary news, and it really shows what direction how fast we're falling as a nation and a Western world and a world because of elite control and the consolidation of power, money, and control. So I'm going to let you decide if you want me to do news in the flash, if you want to ask me that question.
Why don't we do that? Why don't we do that second hour? I'm looking at a very disturbing trend. And please, Rich Scheben, do not take this personally. I'm looking at the number of people, the relative number of people paying attention to our class today. Our ranking has never been lower in the last couple of years. Simultaneous with that, I wanted to congratulate you with what I thought was a brilliant delivery on the state of collapse that the United States of America is in. I thought you did an outstanding job, a world-class job, from the beginning of this broadcast until I started talking. Seriously. Thank you very much. You've done a great job. However, the GDP is not paying attention. Simultaneous with that, or almost simultaneous with that, I'd like to talk about your recommendation for the self-sufficiency schools. All of the things that you said in this broadcast class today, you and I have discussed privately, and you and I tried to get the American people to wake up and to participate in a Plan B, preparedness school, where like-minded people could teach each other homeschooling, gardening, farming, raising animals, starting your own business, avoiding legally paying taxes, building your own house, owning your own property for a couple $1,000s an acre, literally. And we had one, O-N-E, one tire kicker. One. This is the largest preparedness broadcast in the country. We had one tire kicker. And you and I were working on that for months. So what I'm saying is, right now, I'm looking at the statistics. People are listening to these political pundits talking about all of the things that are going wrong, but not providing any solutions, in my opinion. At the same time, we're going down. People know we're going down, but it must be too hard for them to, I don't know, pay attention, to do something about it. There's only one guy I know who's contacted me. Actually, there are a couple guys who have contacted me. One of them has called in several times. His name is Arjun. He literally took our advice. He bought a property in another state, foreign to him, and he is fixing it up. And I said, Arjun, if you'd like to call in on Friday, I'll give you as much time as you would like, and I will help you, and I will teach you how to avoid paying taxes and how you can set up this new property of yours, since you already decided that you were going to be in business for yourself. You're going to start a business. And since he decided to do that already prior to purchase, I'm going to teach him and you in class how he can save money on the modernization of this property that needs a lot of. This is no small undertaking that Arjun has begun. I saw the pictures. I've seen the project he's working on. It is monumental, and he's doing it. He put his savings into it, his life savings, and he's going to make it work. And I'm going to teach how he can save thousands and thousands. I'm thinking maybe $20,000, $30,000 minimum over time through avoiding paying taxes by the things that most people would just pay taxes on. I'm going to teach the class how to do this. It's all legal. It's all above board. And it is what Donald Trump has done, in my opinion. Except the illegalities that people have been accusing him of are not included in what I'm going to recommend, because I don't do these things that are illegal. But I think this will be an eye-opener. This will be on Friday, class, if you want to pay attention. Should the creek not rise, and God willing. Another thing I wanted to mention was the self-sufficiency schools. One more point about this, connecting one more dot. This is my opinion. Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Mike Bloomberg, Donald Trump, the Queen, Elon Musk, any and all of the world's most greedy people individually could start the self-sufficiency preparedness schools. They could pay for the whole thing, one in every state, and they probably wouldn't even feel the financial impact based on their monumental greed and wealth. I challenge them to give us a call, and we'll put it together. We'll do it. We'll do the work. All you have to do, Jeff, Bill, Warren, Mike, Donald, and the Queen Mother, and Elon Musk, all you have to do is provide the money. We'll do the work. But I'll bet you don't even call. And I'll give you the number, 866-582-9933. Thank you for being in class with us today. And Rich Scheben, I have a couple other short comments. We're talking about what the government was doing regarding gifts of money to prevent people or postpone people from rioting. We said that it would be inflationary. It would be catastrophic. It would be hyperinflation. Let me just give you some concrete examples in my life. So when we built our house about 15, 16 years ago, I bought OSB, oriented strand board. That's the 4x8 sheathing, 7/16 of an inch thick. That's what you see put on the exterior skin of houses. It was $6.99 a sheet. $6.99 a sheet for a 4x8 sheet, 4 feet by 8 feet, 7/16 of an inch thick. I wanted to buy some materials to build a couple bookcases, 2 bookcases. So I called the usual lumberyard. They don't have 1 by 12, 8 feet long, meaning 1 inch thick, 12 inches wide, 8 feet long. They don't have enough of them to build 2 bookcases. I called another lumber company. They don't have it either. They don't know when they're going to get it. One lumber company said maybe by May they might have some. And then I said, what's going on? Is anybody buying lumber? What's happening? Well, the lumber companies, from what I can tell, don't want to buy inventory because the prices are so high. How high? Let me tell you how high. When we built our house, you could buy a 2x4, 8 feet long, for less than $1. Today's price, $8. I'm not exaggerating. You go look it up yourself. Look at Home Depot, Lowe's. You'll see it. A 2x4, 8 feet long, about $8. Within a few cents. A 1x12 piece of pine that used to be $3 or $4 is now $18. When I talked to the manager of the lumberyard, I said, so what's happening with pricing? He said, well, that $6.99 sheet of OSB that you used to buy around 2005 last week was $34. This week, it's $43, $42.99. So class, if you don't think hyperinflation is here, look again. What I really mean is, if you don't think it's here, you're confused. You're not paying attention. It's here. And Rich, you told me privately many times over the last several weeks that people are building houses like crazy in Montana. And the price is as much as $400 per square foot. Now, $200 per square foot used to be the price of a custom home, like you might see in Hollywood. Maybe, $200 a square feet. You're talking about a regular, nothing special home at $400 a square foot. Is that right?
Yeah. In fact, let me expand on that. That's in a Whitefish community, which is about 45 minutes from here. And Whitefish is a kind of I don't want to call it an Aspen, but it's kind of heading that direction. So you have super custom homes being built. It's a lot less around here, but that's in the wealthy community. And I know of a builder who paid for 7/16 OSB last week in North Dakota, $69. $69, just FYI. Now, we have a situation that certain things are being inflated, and, but we're still seeing bankruptcies, defaults, and delinquencies, or debt. Debt is deflationary by nature. That's why when you look at all this, that's why I give many different examples, and some of it's demographic examples, some of it's regional examples, some of it's, it depends on what it is. Right now, if you think you can't afford a home, I'm telling everybody who wants to, eventually live in rural America and have a garden, have animals, have freedom, is to buy your land now. And, typically when we go into a hyperinflationary state, things crash. And then when things crash, that's when the elite buy things for pennies on the dollar. So if you could have your land and then prices go down for lumber down the road, or if you have an RV, or if you have a fifth wheel, or if you have a camper. I know people, believe it or not, in Montana who lived for years in wall tents and teepees. Now, I'm not suggesting you try that, but I know a lot of tough people who have successfully done this. Keep in mind, this money supply has grown astronomically compared to the working population. So we have a major disassociation of money creation regarding population growth, and to substitute a flood of phony manufactured liquidity for a waning demand, even though the demand in building is going up in certain areas for certain things. So they're forcing prices artificially higher despite decelerating growth and demand around the country. And when I say that, the demand in urban America is decelerating. That's where the majority of the population is. That's why they're going to rural America to be self-sufficient and do all the things that we talk about. So you have to remember there's a connection between inflation and centralized top-down control by the state, where special privileges are for certain people or certain groups. So everything is totally different, every definition, every region, every demographic, everything. You got to look at everything as a line item, because I can make a case for deflation, stagflation, and inflation depending on what part of the country and what industry it's in. I mean, when I look out my window here, here in northwest Montana, we have 93% National Forest Service. We have more timber that the powers that be allow to burn, and we can make such a difference in commerce, in jobs, in supply and demand, and bringing down building materials. But because of, like some of the things I talked about earlier, the social consequences, the so-called, what the expert authorities are saying regarding environmental rules and EPA rules and all this stuff. They're making it so under the guise of it's best for everybody type lingo. It's not. It's not for the good of the people. This is part of the agenda, which we've talked about I'm blue in the face talking about it. It's to crash the economy, to delegitimize work, force government austerity, depopulation, eliminating the free speech, destroying our immune system, immunity passports, forced lockdowns. There's a whole 35 things on that list that I've talked about in great detail and specificity. We have to look at everything on a line-by-line basis, and we got to look at it in a timeliness basis, too, because the powers that be, historically, that's why they don't want us, they buy everything for pennies on the dollar when everything crashes. You have to be prepared for not just thinking outside the box and talking outside the box, but living outside the box, and whatever it takes. Because when the music stops, we don't know. Remember, I asked all these unknown questions and variables on where things are going to go. How long is the Fed going to buy treasuries, interest rates, valuations, stimulus package, money laundering, the lack of confidence in government and central banks, suppression of gold and silver. I mean, it's illegal. The lack of confidence in the world reserve currency status, which is our dollar. Is the government going to, what does hedge mean anymore? Are they going to default on the debt, or are they going to inflate it? We can talk about, and I'm not trying to play devil's advocate on purpose, but we have to look at the corruption behind the scenes. I mean, when I say we have entered an elite control, totalitarian, fascist, corrupt, tyrannical, communist insurrection, I'm not kidding. So we're going to continue to have the manufactured perception of the truth for the purpose of moving money and wealth inequality from the bottom 93% to the top 1% to 2%. We're going to get the crumbs. The top 5, the next 5% to 6% above us are going to get the bread trucks, and the top 1% to 2% are going to get the bakeries. In the meantime, they're covering up their crimes, and we're not going to get, they're going to control more and more information, and our country is in jeopardy. And like I said, when we have no representation for the little people, and it's so obvious that our FBI, our DOJ, our Supreme Court, even our military, oath, code, honor, duty means nothing. Judges, lawyers, politicians, bankers, medical tyranny. When we have our once most trusted institutions, and Justice Thomas, I apologize for putting you in that category. You are the exception to the rule. And unfortunately, we have too many exceptions and not enough rules. We no longer have a plan of action that's viable, that's inside the box, that's worthy. This is why I know I'm redundant on ideas and solutions, conferences, meetings, clubs, movements, to talk about all the things that we've talked about before. We need to create small business alliances. We need to have their own private venues. We need to have a commerce club. I mean, for all the people who were listening who were saying, oh, man, well, how's this going to help me? Well, if we had a commerce club and we had like-minded people coming to these meetings, we can get Tom, Dick, and Harry, Jane, and Sue. Vincent and I have talked about this to redundancy. And we get those people together, and we combine their capital resources. We combine their skill sets. They cross-train. They live on the property depending on what is negotiated. It could be 3 years. It could be 7 years. And you got a place to live. You're building a hobby farm, and then you're selling it as a working farm. If you decide to do that, maybe Tom, Dick, and Harry might want to buy out, Jane and Sue, or, whatever. You got to have options, but you got to not just think about it, you got to do it. See, if we had this commerce club, if we had these ideas and solutions conferences, we can get the bottom 93% to literally put a microphone in their hand and say, hey, I have an idea, I have a solution. And then we get people together and we combine their resources, their talents, their skill sets. And we think and live outside the box. We're not talking prosperity here, folks. We're so corrupt as a nation. We're talking survivability. I can talk economics and finance all day. If there's no fair value, no fundamentals, no earnings, no price discovery, credit and debt's redefined, money printing out the wazoo, supply and demand's gone, free markets are gone, profits mean nothing. Definitions mean nothing anymore. What's the sense in discussing it? We're at beyond the 11th hour, folks. It's up to us to speak up and create solutions. We'll be right back.
Rich, I just want to tell you that your passionate plea for Americans to wake up, to speak up, to get moving was exemplary today. I mean, truly outstanding. And in comparison to what I've heard when I tune across the dial, just because I just want to see what the other guys are talking about. What the other guys are talking about is just something I can't even listen to. It is so idiotic, so mundane, so non to the point, so unuseful, as compared to what you've just delivered, during this broadcast class today. And by the way, the numbers are picked up to our normal numbers. So maybe it was just an anomaly that, during your performance in the front of the classroom, your monologue, it was truly outstanding. I would have to say, of all the broadcasting we have done, that would be in the top 10, if not the top presentation that you've delivered. Truly outstanding. And I'm just proud to be your friend and to be on the air with you. I really am. Done a great job.
Well, Vince, I appreciate the kind words, and
I mean it.
Well, I know you mean it, and I appreciate the kind words, and thank you for that. But I still call myself an average Joe, non-hyphenated American, and I do this. I don't do this for money. I don't do this to be infamous or famous. I do this because I feel that I'm an American, and I'm obligated to talk about the hypocrisies, the double standards, the non-functional, unsustainable gig economy that we're in, where we have a different set of rules, laws, and accountability based on what group you're in, where we have, I can't tell you how much corruption that I've discussed, manipulation, fraud, racketeering, all the crimes, the pedophilia, the treason, sedition, espionage, no transparency for anything because we're literally run by a giant mafia. And I just feel, the people aren't getting the correct information. Like here's two articles. Vince, I know we went off into tangents today, but if it's okay with you, I'd like to mention a few articles in the last few minutes that we have. Is that okay?
Yeah, please do.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for letting me exercise my First Amendment right as always. But here's two articles based on health, exclusive, former Pfizer VP, entirely possible this will be used for massive scale depopulation. And Dr. Mike Yeadon is talking about, of course, the vaccines, and he's a proponent of hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin and other therapeutics. And, you know, when you come out and say this, and I know I've said this before, this Dr. Geert Vanden Bosch, who's a PhD and a DVM, who worked for very corrupt corporations like GlaxoSmithKline and Bill and Melinda Gates and the Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization. You know, he basically says that the administration of the Chinese virus vaccines is going to trigger a phenomenon known as viral immune escape, and that will transform a quite harmless virus into an uncontrollable monster. So basically, what these people are talking about, and I've talked about this in great detail, and we just don't have a lot of time, but what they're saying is these mRNA vaccines are destroying antibodies, causing autoimmune diseases like autism, Down syndrome, neurological disorders, basically that they're well-designed genetic modification tools for killing and causing cancer. And I'm reading so many articles. I mean, here, Justin Trudeau up in Canada, he says you'll need to immediately quarantine in designated government facilities. These are not optional. You know, Joe Biden basically wants to governors reinstate mask mandates, even though I've given information, psychological, physiological, 50% increase in the bacteria in the mouth, including bacterial pneumonia, which is correlated to heart attacks and strokes. I've given so much information where masks are actually hurting people. I'm blue in the face. You know, fascist left-wing tyrant Dr. Lena Wen says on CNN that freedom should be withheld from the American people until they surrender to be vaccinated. People, you have to read between the dots. I give you published information, published articles in the public domain. At least over 2,000 Americans have died from the vaccine. Imagine if this was mass killings with guns.
Rich, I've got a hypothetical question. Why is it that America has not gone after China for the destruction of humanity with this Chinese virus? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I've talked about it in great detail. Basically, the short answer is, since I'm looking at the clock here, is that basically most of our institutions and so-called leaders, and I use that term in quote and asterisk and italics, have been bought and paid for. They have, including our intelligence agencies, the rule of law has been eliminated. They have allowed political correctness to basically destroy our country and cover up the elite crimes. So basically, they're transferring. I've even read that they're proposing a new SDR, which is a basket of currencies. It's going to be crypto, electronic, and centralized, coming out of China. So basically, we handed them our manufacturing, our information, our military secrets, our patents, our copyrights, and given them all the technology that we should have used for our people to better their life and prosperity and jobs. And a few elites at the very top, like some of the names that we've given today, have basically sold out the American people to feather their own nest and manufacture their own perception of self-importance, and they sold us out. That's basically the bottom line.
At the bottom of the hour during the newscast, we learned that 90% of Americans live within 10 miles of a Chinese factory outlet, Walmart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we've talked about all this before. Forced obsolescence by design. This is what happens when, I'm blue in the face talking about all this. And this is why I throw in ideas and solutions. We need to have conferences and meetings and movements. We need to have it done on private venues. We need to stick up and have Small Business Alliance. We need to think outside the box. We need to have a backup plan for currency/money, like poor man's gold, a.k.a. silver, or whatever the people decide. We have to have plan Bs in place. And too many people are literally giving up because, well, the powers that be keep stirring the pot and creating, race baiting and gender baiting and sexual orientation baiting and this baiting and that baiting to divide us, all using divide and conquer strategies. And even though there is an obvious wake up and a lot of people are voting with their feet and coming to rural America, I mean, there was a house here in town, it was on 6 acres just like a week or two ago. 40 people were bidding on it the first day it came on the market. And it went up. It basically sold for $40,000, $50,000 above the asking price. This is the norm. This is why I'm saying, forget about the house. There's not a lot of houses left. If they are, they're either dumps and you're paying too much for it, or they're in the $1 million range. So let
me ask you a question. And you don't have to answer if you don't want to, and I'll answer the question if you want me to answer it. If someone were to offer me 2 times what the fair market value of our farm is, I would say no. If someone offered me 10 times what the fair market value of our farm is, I would say no. How would you answer that question? If someone offered
I would say, just like any question, I would say it depends. And what I mean by that is, what are you offering me? Are you offering me a portion in gold and silver that
I'm talking about cash.
That it's really gold and silver?
Cash, Federal Reserve notes.
Yeah, I think we're getting close to the witching hour on the Federal Reserve note. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. Everything about the future is speculation. So when people talk about the future with guarantee this is the way it's going to happen, they're full of BS. I'm telling you right now. That's why I talked about all the different variables that are unknown in this corrupt system. It's very difficult. I mean, these people are literally talking about words like equality, fairness, tolerance, and diversity while they're harvesting baby parts, while they're giving record bonuses to banks that are basically insolvent, and while they give them a bailout in the same year, while they're normalizing pedophilia, while they're manufacturing hate hoaxes, teaching kids in school to change their gender, erasing proven results and qualifications for getting a job. I mean, eliminating free speech. I can't tell you how many hypocrisies and double standards have we talked about. Installing politicians, eliminating the voice of the people, legalizing voter fraud. I mean, how can you put values on anything, Vince, or timelines in a corrupt system that we have today? How do you put value on anything? I'm asking you that question. What has value, and what is it? And when is the timeline for when the people decide, oops, I ain't taking that anymore? Vince?
Well, if you're talking about value, it's very, very difficult. And that was one of the reasons why I asked the question. What would you do? So if someone gave you Federal Reserve notes, would you be able to find a property and rebuild what you've got, or maybe something different based on what you've learned? The answer is,
let me tell you some outside the box ideas on what I may do. Okay.
Sure.
Let's say somebody really wanted my property. It's nothing special. I live off the grid. I don't even have running water or pressure tank or hot water heater, and I chose this life. So let's say somebody offered me $1 gazillion for this. Okay, whatever that is. Okay, it's analogous to using the term widget as a product when you're talking about supply and demand and production and things. So let's say somebody offered me $1 gazillion. In Federal Reserve notes, like you said, I would probably say, okay, I still get, I'm going to create a living will. I'm going to still live on my property. I'm going to build a little cottage or a little cabin on the other side of it, and you get to live here, and I would get to live here till I'm dead. Or another example that would come to my mind I would say, well, you're going to have to give me the money at closing, but I get to live here for, say, 3 or 4 months to slowly move out, but also quickly look for another place to live. So I wouldn't get stuck with a devalued currency during that So if the crapper hits the fan in that 3-4 month period, I'm not sitting with a bunch of worthless fiat paper that I can't get rid of for product, for value, for service, for property. You see what I'm saying? That's how close we are. When you're creating trillions of dollars under these benevolent names, like for helping COVID people or for infrastructure, and then you really look at the math and you see just a small portion of it's going to that, and the rest is going to donors and sponsors and payouts and money laundering and hiding this and paying off them, and you're at the end of the game. So when does the music stop? And that's an analogy for musical chairs. When does that stop? And see, we're so close to that period right now that, there's no confidence in anything, including government, including central banks, including anything. Zero. There's zero confidence.
That's the point. And when I mentioned that a sheet of OSB, which I thought was astronomical at $43 a sheet, and you came in with a newer price of $69 a sheet.
Well, that was from a contractor in North Carolina where there's like no trees, no lumber, and that, who knows? I don't know if it was a one-time thing, but I got it from a very good source that was the case.
There's plenty of wood. There's plenty of wood in North Carolina. There's plenty of wood in Virginia. North
Dakota is where this contractor was made.
Okay. Well,
but still, my point is, this is all by design. Mm-hmm. Okay, supply chain and disruption is all by design. I heard there's another boat that went astray in what was it called? The Suez Canal by Egypt there, just in the last 24 hours. Everything is done by design to block supply chain production and movements. This is done. Everything is being done by plan, scripted. The COVID thing, the reactions, the agenda, everything is designed theater. And that's why there's so many patriots or white hats or whatever you want to call them that are leaking all of these documents. All of this was pre-planned, especially through the UN. And our people have sold us out to these global governances under these benevolent terms and so-called official authorities. And they mean absolutely nothing. So it's up to the people to start thinking about, we're reaping the consequences of decades of inaction towards political correctness. And all that does is support the ruling class. All it does is support cowards and followers and traitors. If Donald Trump, he's done probably more than what anybody could ask for, but if other people could create ideas and solutions conferences all over, and then we can create our own judges, we can create our own juries, we can create our own commerce clubs, we can create our own, give the people the microphone. Of course, we'd have to have a board so they'd be vetted because there would be infiltration. There's no doubt about it by the elites. But let's say we created something like this. We could literally wipe out, we can re-vet everything from the people talking to the business to legal immigration to bringing back the rule of law and the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. If we did this one thing, create ideas and solution conferences in every state, maybe even in every county or at least every region, we could have a plan B for the people and change everything overnight. But see, these big money people, they would, again, rather buy their jet, their yacht, their big ranch, or their island and their underground bunkers and not help the people because they've given up on the people. All they care about is their own nest. And see, that's not what built America. What built America was people coming up with ideas and solutions, with productivity, helping each other. Remember the old days of raising barns? And now we have tattletales and snitches and a bunch of elementary school people. Remember that analogy, that example I mentioned? I haven't mentioned it probably a year or two, but I remember when I was in elementary school, it was Muhammad Ali was fighting Joe Frazier. And a couple kids would say, Joe, Frazier, Frazier, Frazier. And then some of the kids would yell, Frazier, Frazier, Frazier. The same kids, seconds later, would yell, Ali, Ali, Ali. And the same kids would yell, Ali, Ali, Ali. When you cultivate and groom followers, it's at the expense of thinkers. I'm not saying we don't need leaders. Every ship needs a captain, but we need thinkers desperately in America. Desperately. We'll be right back, everybody.
Rich, were you going to talk about Matt Gaetz, the congressional person accused of having sex with a underage 17-year-old?
Well, yeah, he was demanding. I have so many articles here. We only have a couple minutes left to the end of the broadcast. Obviously, I'm not going to get to all the information that I prepared for, which is very typical for us. We go into tangents, but he demanded that the FBI and the DOJ release recordings of the DOJ official threatening his family with extortion in the millions of dollars. It's all about the diversion, the distraction, the dumbing down, and the dividing of America to get away, with all the women coming after Cuomo. Nothing's going to happen to Cuomo. This is what they need to move your eyes off the ball onto something else. It's just like Nancy Pelosi. She was seen on tape talking about smear campaigns on how they smear people. This is just an example with Matt Gaetz. Hunter Biden, he literally posted the Biden family porn on Pornhub. No one really cares, but when he calls Trump a vile man on a vile mission, the hypocrisies and double standards don't line up. Why would the FBI do this to Matt Gaetz? There's articles out there that the FBI exists to damage Republicans. There is some good news out there, too. Montana Governor Gianforte signs legislation to ban sanctuary cities in the state. Governor Gianforte, if you can create self-sufficiency preparedness schools, if you can assist in ideas and solutions conferences where the people get the microphone, of course they'd have to be vetted because of infiltration, which there would be, and there would have to be a board. I think it would be very useful here in Montana, and it can expand nationwide. You have Reddit joining Twitter and protecting pedophiles who post literally posting exploitive depictions of young children, and they're defending it. Here Delta Airlines CEO blasts unacceptable Georgia voter ID laws, but yet they're demanding ID to get on their planes. We have hypocrisy and double standards all over the place. Nearly 80% of women and girls crossing into the U.S. by way of Mexico are raped or assaulted sexually. But where are the feminists? Where, again, double standards and hypocrisies? New York Senate just passed a concentration camp bill to forcibly throw people in camps just like the Nazis did during World War II. These are all articles published in the public domain. Democrats argue removing dead people from rolls because it's voter suppression or it's racist. Megan Rapinoe, the female professional soccer player, she wants equal pay despite inferior abilities. This is an article right in front of me here. 14-year-old high school boys team beat this team, and they want equal pay with men. It's about economics, supply and demand, skill sets, hard work, effort, proven results. You know, and it's the same woke Pentagon that says men and women are exactly the same. And they're pushing to lower the bars of standards on fitness for women everywhere, including in the military. See, this does nothing. You don't reward any group or empower them with mediocrity and expect to empower your group or your country. State abducts 6-year-old girl after mother's seen not wearing a mask while dropping her off at school. I cannot tell you. 81 million vote getter Joe Biden greeted by 24 supporters in Columbus, Ohio for a speech. Same thing with Kamala Harris in Oakland the other day. No one's coming to see these guys. It's fake everything. There's no more confidence in science and math because everybody's bought and paid for. Just like this, the transgender extremist Rachel Levine. And these are words coming out of this article. She's an advocate of sex changes for children. That's not, there's no benevolence in there. There's no equality and fairness in there. This is a takedown of our country. A takedown. I mean, Milwaukee leaves adopted kids in the same home as the Democrat judge charged with child porn. How is that reality? How is that America? Really? I mean, I have all these articles that obviously I'm not going to get to today because we're down to seconds, Vince. But,
how about Pete What's His Butt? How about Pete What's His Butt is ridiculed for staging a bike ride. He's caught unloading a bicycle from a gas-guzzling SUV near the White House and then riding into a cabinet meeting. And he's trying to promote eco-friendly transport. This is the kind of stuff that Joseph Goebbels would love, right?
Yeah.
In today's media. Homo Pete. And this is why I said, what these guys do in their bedroom, you can't say, well, that's okay, it's in their bedroom. No, these lies, this greed, this me first stuff transfers to everything that these guys do.